part of the DBT group that I had mentioned that I run earlier. And we haven't been running DBT since everything with COVID started. And so I've been really missing it. So I'm really excited about the chance to talk about mindfulness. So I hope you enjoy what I have to say. So just knowing that tonight people might have varying understanding of even what mindfulness is. A lot of this is going to be more so talking about what mindfulness is and how to practice it. And then maybe in the future we can do another session more so on some exercises in practicing mindfulness. So basically what this is going to look like is, like I just said, we're going to chat about what is mindfulness and hopefully maybe broaden your understanding of what mindfulness is. Why practice mindfulness, right? So yeah, I can tell you about what it is, but if you don't think it's going to be helpful for you, I promise you, no matter how many people tell you like, hey, this is great, you should do it, you're not going to do it. Why would you? Right? So we're going to talk about the benefits of mindfulness, why it's helpful, or why it might be helpful for some people. Again, you might leave this and be like, you know what, I don't think this is for me, and that's totally okay too. We're going to talk about safety and boundaries around mindfulness, and then we're going to talk about the 3 states of mind. And then throughout the presentation as well, we're going to take some time to do a couple of exercises to practice. All right, so I do want to just kind of touch on that we do very much live in a society now where things are really busy, right? So society is made up of technology, and with the development of technology, we have really turned into a society of multitaskers. So I don't know about you, but I know that I totally fall into this category. I also know that I totally am not successful at it. I know that when I am playing on my phone or answering a text message at the same time as working on a document for work, at the same time as trying to take care of my dog, because it's me and my dog here right now, I don't get as much done, right? And sometimes we feel like we have to get that much done. Sometimes it even feels like we're more productive when we're doing that. But there's actually a lot of research that says that we're not as productive and we're not actually as effective as the things that we do when we're doing that, when we're multitasking as well. The other piece is that we're a very fast-paced society, right? So things move really fast and we feel like we have to go. And we have to get things done really fast. And I think a part of that is sometimes we get kind of wrapped up in our thoughts about future events. And we also get wrapped up in our thoughts about past events too, right? So again, we're a very performance, success-driven society right now, and we really place a lot of emphasis and value on that. And in some ways, that's really, really amazing. But in other ways, if I'm spending a lot of my time thinking about like, okay, that thing happened yesterday, and how can I do better next time? Sometimes that can actually cause me a lot of discomfort, and it can be really distressing, and to the point where sometimes it's not super helpful for me. Just like I might also be thinking about things in the future, and I might be worrying about those things coming up, or I might just be planning for them, right? We do that a lot. I am very food-based. You'll probably hear me talk about food a few times throughout this. I like my food. And so by like 10 o'clock in the morning, I'm probably already like, okay, what am I gonna have for supper tonight? And pieces of that are just like, 1, I'm looking forward to that yummy food that I'm going to eat later. But also 2, I need to figure out, okay, do I need to get anything out of the freezer for that? Do I have to prep that? Do I have time? What do I have going on tonight? Right? And so when we get really wrapped up in those things, we can sometimes miss the moments right in front of us. And again, it can be really helpful to be a planner. I like to plan things. I make lists for my plans. I'm all about that life. But sometimes it can also just be really helpful to be in the moment right now so that we don't miss those things. But it can be really hard to disconnect from that. Fast, productive daily pace can also increase our judgments of ourselves and others. So again, when we're going really fast, when we see other people around us going really fast, we can judge ourselves based on like, oh, what if I'm not doing as much as Jenna? What if I saw Jenna, like she was so productive today, she got all those things done and I didn't? And what if my supervisor tomorrow says like, wow, Kristen, you didn't catch up with Jenna? I'm probably going to be really hard on myself, right? Versus just kind of acknowledging that, like, hey, my day looked different than Jenna's. That's okay. So with all of these pieces, mindfulness can be really helpful. So what is mindfulness? So where mindfulness comes from is Eastern meditation practices. That's where we've learned about it. And there's a lot of research on mindfulness in the last, I'd say, probably 10 years. There's been a lot of researchers saying, like, hey, this is something that we actually need to bring into North America and do more of. So one piece of it is opening the mind. So we are increasing awareness to hopefully, potentially, full awareness. So what that means is that we want to be aware of the present moment. So when I am talking to people who have never, ever heard about mindfulness in their life, there's a couple of things that I say. When we're practicing mindfulness, we're working on being in the present moment, here and now. We're working on taking out the judgment and accepting that what's happening is happening, and also treating these moments with compassion for ourselves and with others. So when we're talking about full awareness, we're talking about this moment right now in the present, and we're talking about all of those experiences. So not just the things that you can see, we're talking about the thoughts that are happening right now. We're talking about the emotions, the physical body sensations, and we're talking about noticing that all of those things are happening, but also not putting judgment on them. So I will be the first one to tell you that taking that judgment off, I think I put judgment on taking judgment off because I find taking that judgment off to be really hard. And part of it is because I think that we tend to kind of put a negative connotation with the word judgment. And so when I think of being judgy or judgmental, I think about like thinking bad things about people or about myself. But a judgment can be good things too. A judgment, another way to think of a judgment, is like an opinion. Right? So I might look at a flower and I might be like, that is the most beautiful flower I've seen in my whole entire life. Patty might look at that flower and be like, that is a horrible, ugly flower and I hope it dies. Right? So it's not a fact that it's a beautiful flower or an ugly flower. It's just a fact that it's a flower. But that judgment that we place on it can really color and change the way that we see that flower. And so part of having that full awareness is we experience things in a different way when we take the judgment off and just experience it as, hey, here's the fact of like, this is what that thing is. So the other piece, so full awareness, open mind, and then we're also going to talk about focused mind. So one of the other benefits, really big benefits of mindfulness is attentional control. So we're staying focused on one thing at a time. So again, we're going to talk a little bit more in a second about what that looks like. But that's one of the intentions of mindfulness. So we're increasing our awareness, but we're also kind of honing our focus. So if I am focusing on the present moment, I'm taking out those things that might be distracting my brain and making me think about other things. So what is mindfulness? So again, it's an awareness of our present experience, using all your senses with acceptance and without judgment. So the more that I talk about mindfulness and the more that I practice mindfulness, the more times a day I say, it is what it is. And so that to me is just that embodiment of radical acceptance of I'm just stopping, I'm dropping everything, and I'm accepting 100% that this is what it is right now. It is a fact that flower is a flower. It is not a fact that it's beautiful or ugly. It's not a fact that it could be harmful because it's taking over my garden and maybe it's actually a weed. It's a fact that it's a plant, right? It just is what it is. That is what it is in this moment. When we're using mindfulness, we're looking at slowing things down, observing. So a phrase that I use a lot when I'm practicing mindfulness that really helps me is I'm noticing that. So when I'm observing, and again, taking off that judgment as best as I can, and also, side note, when I'm taking off that judgment, I'm also being gentle with myself when I'm finding that I'm judging. I'm observing that I'm judging that flower. That's actually me being mindful, which is kind of cool. And so I don't want to judge myself for judging. I'm just going to accept that, yep, I was judgmental just then. And that's okay. And then we're going to bring our focus back. And something that I really, one of the ways that I really like thinking about mindfulness is that it's not about necessarily living life in slow motion. I think sometimes we kind of have this idea of when we're being mindful. I don't know about you guys, but before I really started to learn a lot about it, I had this image of mindfulness and it kind of looked like this, of just like a Buddha sitting cross-legged, like totally serene, calm all the time, like listening to the world. That's not what mindfulness necessarily is. It's being focused on the right now. It's being accepting. It's being open. It's paying attention to what's happening right now. And it's enhancing your focus and awareness, both in work and in life. And a part of that is stripping away the distractions so that we can stay on track with our goals, right? So at 10 o'clock in the morning today, was it helpful for me to be thinking about what I'm making for dinner? No. Right now, as I'm doing this presentation, is it helpful for me to be planning or thinking about what I'm going to do at 8 o'clock tonight? No. That's going to be distracting. And then it's probably not going to make me feel super good after when I'm like, wait a second, what even happened during the youth hub tonight? Because I won't have really fully experienced this, right? That's going to change my experience. The other piece that I really, really like about mindfulness, and I know I keep saying that, but I'm a big fan of mindfulness, in case you couldn't tell, is that it helps you be more in control of your mind instead of letting your mind be in control of you. So something that I sometimes ask people is, what percentage do you believe that you have control of your mind? So think about that for a second. So sometimes people tell me like 80% they feel like they're in control of their thoughts, feelings, what's going on for them. Sometimes it's 50%, sometimes it's 0.0001%. And mindfulness can help increase that control. So mindfulness is like a puppy. It's also like a muscle. So when I'm talking about that control piece, what I think about is mindfulness being like a muscle in terms of the more we work it, the stronger it gets. And so the more that it can do, right? The stronger our muscles get, the more that we can lift, the more that we can do, the more our endurance increases, right? So mindfulness is also like a puppy. So I don't know if any of you have ever tried to train a puppy. I have. Super fun sometimes, and sometimes super frustrating, and that's okay. So in my experience of training a puppy, my puppy didn't know how to sit, stay, do any of the things when I got him. And so often I think when we think about that puppy, I might say, okay, Oliver, stay. And he would probably have like gotten up and gone to the corner and peed, right? And so then I have to bring him back. And then I might tell him stay. And so when I taught him how to stay, part of what I did was I would say stay, and then I would like count to 5 in my head, and then I would give him the command that he could go ahead. He was fine. I would give him the treat. And then after he was able to be successful with that, I extended it to 10 seconds and then 30 seconds. And then I started walking away. So I would like take a step back, and then I would take 5 steps back, and then 10 steps back. And now we're at the point where I can say to Oliver, okay, stay. And I can leave the room, I can go in and out, and I can do all of these things. He could probably stay for like 5 minutes without me saying like, okay, go ahead, you can get up. And he could be successful with that. I promise you that it's taken a few years to get there. And that's kind of what mindfulness is like too. So again, I might have that idea of like, if I'm being all like mindful and meditative, that I'm that Buddha that's always like got it under control and things are good. I know exactly how to do this all the time. Guess what? Your mind is going to wander. If you figure out how to not do that, please let me know, because I know that I've been practicing mindfulness for a long time. My mind still wanders all the time. The really cool thing though is that when we notice, hey, my mind has got up and it's in that corner and it's about to pee, and then we bring it back, that's actually being mindful. When we notice that we're not being mindful, and we're human, it's okay. And so of like, hey, yeah, you weren't being mindful. That's okay. And now you are. We brought it back, and we're going to keep focusing on this thing right here, right now. We're going to keep focusing on those goals, and we're going to go with it, right? Just like when I was training my dog. Absolutely, there was days that I got frustrated. And on those days when I got frustrated and I judged him and I judged myself, training didn't go super well. But when I was able to be more compassionate to myself and to him and kind and really focus on this is what's happening right now, we were more successful and we were able to move forward with that. So I want you to look at this picture for a second, and I want you to think about the difference between those two thought bubbles. So sometimes we might have our mind full of things, or we might be mindful. So when we're being mindful, we're focusing on and we're thinking about what is happening right now. So in some of our mindfulness exercises, for sure, it might not be what's actually happening in front of us. We might do a guided meditation and kind of do some imagery and things like that. And when we're doing that, again, we're just focusing on that one thing versus, again, like I said at the beginning, right? Sometimes our minds are just full. And I don't know about you guys, but for me, on days when my mind is full, I kind of feel like I have a balloon and I need to let some air out, because it's really hard to focus on what's happening in front of me. And it's really hard to like enjoy things happening in front of me in the present right now when I'm thinking about all those other things in my cloud. Right. And so I kind of think about that phrase that people often say, right? Stop to smell the roses or stop to smell the flowers. And I think there's a lot of stock in that. I think that we get so busy that it's really easy to miss the things happening right in front of us that maybe we could actually get a lot of joy out of, right? I think about right now, I know we've almost had to have like a purposeful break and a purposeful step back and slowing down. And maybe we've had to be more mindful just because we are in these circumstances because of COVID-19 right now. But I think what I've heard from a lot of people, at least in the first couple of weeks of that, was like, hey, my mind was less full and like, I'm actually feeling a lot better because of that. And I'm able to do that rejuvenation that I needed because of that. So be mindful can help slow you down, can help expose you to those things happening right in front of you that maybe you really don't want to miss. It increases your self-awareness. So one of the helpful things about mindfulness is if I'm being mindful and I'm working on that mindfulness and my self-awareness is increasing, I'm more aware of the thoughts and the feelings that I'm experiencing. So I am someone that gets hangry. If you're new to that term, it means that when I get hungry, I sometimes get angry. And when I get hangry, I don't do a great job staying in control of my thoughts, emotions, behaviors. However, as I've increased my awareness, I'm able to become more in tune with like, oh, I'm not actually angry right now. I'm not feeling yucky because of something you did to me. I'm just really hungry right now and I need to eat a Snickers. And that's something that's really easy to fix, right? But if I'm not aware that like, hey, I need to do that thing to help myself be okay right now, I'm not going to do it, right? So that's where that self-awareness can be really helpful of like, hey, this is what's actually going on for me. And now I can do something to actually help myself because of that. So that can be really helpful. Being mindful can help you make decisions. It can help you kind of figure out, okay, what thoughts and feelings are influencing this decision right now? If I was in a calm, relaxed space, all other things were equal, what would that look like versus maybe trying to make a decision under pressure? It can help give you a sense of control. And again, we're in a time right now where a lot of things might feel out of our control. And so taking back some of that control can be really, really helpful. It can help focus our attention. It can help us be in control of our minds. Can increase your compassion for self and others. So again, when I'm taking that judgment out, I may be more clearly able to see like, oh, that's why that person's doing that. Not because they have it out for me or they think I'm a horrible person. Maybe I can see like, hey, they're having a hard time and maybe that's why they did that action that is hard for me. And it can help reduce our stress and improve your health. So often the other benefit of mindfulness is it can be really relaxing. And it can kind of calm down our whole system. right? So that's not only going to help us have more control, focus our attention, but it's actually just going to reduce our stress in general. And again, thinking about mindfulness as a muscle, the more often you practice it, the quicker you actually relax. So I have a couple of guided meditations that I do now that even by like the first line or the first breath, my whole body is just like, oh, yes, because it knows what's coming. My mind is like, yeah, I know what's happening right now, and I'm going to feel so good in 5 seconds. And it just does it for me before I even finish the whole exercise, which is kind of cool. So, why practice mindfulness? Human suffering is often connected to worrying about the past or future. So, do you think that you guys can relate to that? I know that I can, absolutely. So, fun fact about me, I am 100% a Harry Potter nerd. And J.K. Rowling has her other book, and there's the movie Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. And there's a quote in there by Newt Scamander that I absolutely love. And it's, worrying means you suffer twice. And to me, that is just like the epitome of the benefit of mindfulness, because it's so true, right? So if I'm worried about, hey, I have to give this presentation and it might not go well, on one hand, there's some benefits to that, right? Our feelings are valid. They happen for a reason. So if I'm worried about this presentation, I'm probably going to prepare for it more, right? I'm going to practice. I'm going to edit it. I'm going to look it over, make sure it's good to go. It means that I care, and I'm going to do my best to do a good job. However, if I didn't sleep last night because I was so nervous about doing this presentation, I'm going to suffer all night, because let's be real, those worry feelings are probably not going to feel super great. I'm probably going to feel kind of yucky. And I'm also tired on top of it because I didn't sleep all night. And then I'm in this presentation, and either it's going to go really well and I'm going to feel good, or it's going to go really horribly and I'm going to feel like crap later. That's just the reality. And so if I take out that worrying piece about the past and future before this presentation happens, I don't have that yuckiness happening then. And then I only have to feel yucky once if this presentation goes well, right? It's so true. Mindfulness helps provide a calmer way of being. Again, like I said, it really helps us be in that moment and experience that moment fully. Acting skillfully is just like I was saying, right? So if I know that I need to use a skill because I'm having a hard time, then I'll use it. If I don't know that I'm having a hard time, or I'm not aware that these thoughts are kind of heading me down the path of I am going to start worrying, that I can't do anything about it. And because of all of these things, it can actually also help improve our relationships. So being present, right? So it doesn't feel good when you're with a friend and you're trying to talk to them about something going on in your life, and they're just like checked right out because they have thoughts going on in their head, or maybe they're texting, or right. It feels really good when your friend's like, hey, I'm here. I'm listening to you. I've got you. It helps us not act on urges or believe our quick judgment. So for example, if my friend hasn't texted me back in 6 hours, if I'm being mindful, I can maybe explore some of the reasons that, or different perspectives that could be behind that, right? Versus kind of jumping into that, like, oh my God, they hate me. They haven't responded in 6 hours. They hate me. I'm taking off that judgment and I'm being more compassionate, and I'm able to just check the facts. The fact is they haven't texted me back in 6 hours. It's not a fact that they hate me. And I'm able to have a more well-rounded perspective for that as well. So I am going to do my very best to do a poll. And so if it doesn't work, I apologize. We'll see what happens. All right. So my poll is, how easy do you find it to sit and focus on the present moment? So A is extremely easy. B, moderately easy. Sometimes I'm more easily distracted. C is moderately difficult. I'm sometimes able to do it. Or the other option is D, difficult. I spend a lot of time distancing myself from the present moment. I'll give you guys a couple of minutes to do that. We'll do like 10 more seconds, and I'll end the poll. Okay, it looks like everybody has voted. Okay, so we have 40% of people saying moderately easy. Sometimes I'm more easily distracted. Absolutely. 40% saying moderately difficult. I'm sometimes able to do it. And 20% saying it's difficult. I spend a lot of time distracting myself from the present moment. And I think also the other piece with this as well is that I think that sometimes people don't actually realize how little they practice mindfulness until they started practicing mindfulness, or they're like, actually, I'm really mindful. I just didn't realize what this was, right? It can kind of go either way. Cool. Thanks, guys. So on that note, my slideshow is no longer, oh, there we go. On that note, we are going to do a mindfulness exercise in a second. So before we do that, I just want to talk quickly about safety and boundaries. So sometimes we intentionally avoid being present or in the moment to distract ourselves from hard thoughts, memories, experiences. Distracting is a really wonderful coping strategy, right? It's really helpful. But what that means is that sometimes when we try to bring ourselves in the moment intentionally, it can feel kind of scary, it can feel yucky, and we can have a hard time. And that's okay. That's normal. And if it happens for you, totally fine. We want this to be a safe experience for you. That's really, really important. And part of what we might do, right, is start kind of building up to that as well. So if difficult thoughts or feelings come up for you when you are practicing mindfulness with us today, when you are practicing mindfulness in your like real lives after you leave the hub today, I want you to remember that you can always disengage from the exercise. A lot of mindfulness exercises ask you to open your eyes, to close your eyes. Just open them, right? Open them and distract yourself with what's around you. You can use a fidget toy. You can think about things that you can see in the room. So an example that I have for you guys of this is that I saw the movie Annabelle in theaters when it came out a few years ago. And let me tell you, it was like one of the scariest movies I've ever seen. It's a horror movie. So at one point, I enjoy horror movies, but at one point in the movie, I was like, actually, I'm too scared and this is no longer enjoyable. So I had to literally like look at the walls of the theater because I had to remind myself like, hey, you are not in this movie right now. And I had to do that grounding for myself. And as soon as I disengaged and was like, oh yeah, movie theater, this is the city I'm in. I'm not in this movie right now. Everything's going to be okay. That was really helpful for me. It's kind of like that. It's okay to take a break. And then I was able to jump back in that example and enjoy the rest of the movie, right? Sometimes we just need a little break to remind ourselves like, hey, I'm okay. We've got this. You can ground yourself. So what I mean by ground yourself is exactly what I just said, right? Kind of bringing yourself back to reality, what's here right now. So you can do this by rubbing your hands together like this. When you do that, creates heat, the sensation, brings you back to the present moment. Same thing with stomping your feet, telling yourself the date today. Again, that may be a little bit more difficult with everything going on with COVID right now. And again, I really want you to remember that if you have to disengage from a mindfulness exercise, it doesn't mean you're failing. It actually means you're being really mindful because you're already increasing your awareness of like, hey, I need a break from this. Totally okay. Okay. So we are going to do our first mindfulness exercise. And this one, if you've done any mindfulness before, this one might actually be a little bit different than what you're used to in terms of a mindfulness exercise. Because we're not going to necessarily work on relaxing and calm. We're going to work on focusing on being in the moment, noticing our thoughts. So what I am going to ask you to do is when I say go, don't do it yet. We're going to put our arms out like this. Okay? So first, like 15 seconds, you're going to be like, okay, yeah, this is fine. After a while, it gets really hard to hold your arms out and they might even start to hurt a little bit. So again, if you're feeling like, actually, I can't manage the discomfort from my arms being out, put them down. That's okay. But do your best to notice that experience, stay in it. Notice any judgments that might come up and what that might be like for you. I want you to notice what's happening in your body. I want you to notice your thoughts. I want you to notice your feelings. You may experience some judgments towards me for telling you that you have to continue to have your arms up. That's okay. Notice that. Okay, so I am going to set a timer for myself of 3 minutes, and we are going to hold our arms out for 3 minutes. I'm going to let you know after every 30 seconds has gone by. All right, friends, arms up. 3, 2, 1, go. So again, while you're doing this, I want you to just notice maybe what's my breath like right now? How am I breathing? What sensations are happening? What body sensations are happening in my arms, chest, belly, legs? If it feels more comfortable, you can stand up. The first 30 seconds has gone by. We have 2.5 minutes left. Another 30 seconds has gone by. 2 more minutes. Noticing your thoughts. Notice any feelings that are coming up. And again, labeling them without judgment. This is my feeling, and that's okay. This is my thought. That's okay. It's another 30 seconds, so another 1.5 minutes. One more minute left. Again, doing your best to focus on the present moment. What's happening right now. Noticing your thoughts, feelings. Maybe focusing on your breath and what that's like right now for you. And 30 more seconds. Three, two, one, and keep your arms up because just kidding, we're gonna do it for 1 more minute. I'm gonna add on the 1 more minute, and I want you to notice right now what thoughts are happening for you. What feelings are going on? What judgments might be coming up that you're letting go? And 30 seconds left for real this time. And you can put your arms down. So, shake those out a little bit. I don't know about you, but my arms are feeling a little bit sore now in my back. Okay, so now I want you to think about, or feel free, I believe you can access the chat right now if you want to access the chat, and let us know what was that experience like for you. And what thoughts might have come up? What feelings might have come up during that? I want you to think about how did it feel to accomplish that? You just held your arms out for 4 minutes, and that might not feel like a lot, but believe me, I felt it. That felt like a lot. How long do you think that you could keep your arms out if I told you that the longest person got to win $1 million? How does that change your mindset? Think about maybe some of the things that you did to be able to push through the discomfort of keeping your arms out and stay in that moment and keep them up. You are totally capable of doing that in real life too. Awesome. Okay. Sorry, it looks like there we go. Maybe I can do that. Perfect. Okay. So just a little mindfulness cheat sheet for you. So when you're doing mindfulness, a few tips. So identify what it is you're going to focus on. So are you going to focus on your breath? Are you going to focus on an object in front of you? Are you going to focus on a specific activity? And something that I like to think about too is kind of like what I said about the puppy, right? That puppy gets up, it's going away, it's coming back. Our mind's going to do that too. Our thoughts are going to do that too. And so if I've decided, hey, right now I'm going to focus on my breath, and I notice that my mind is now thinking about, hey, my dog just came upstairs right now and he's been super whiny all day. And what if he starts to whine? And what am I going to do? I'm going to notice like, oh, I'm having that thought about Oliver. And now I'm just going to bring it back. And when I exhale, I'm going to put that thought that's totally unrelated to my goal right now on a cloud. And when I exhale, I'm just going to blow it away on my breath. I'm just going to tell myself, hey, it's not time for that right now, and that's okay. I'm not going to judge myself for having that other thought. Just, hey, I noticed that another thought came up. I'm going to blow it away on that cloud, and I'll just deal with it later. Right now is just not the time. You can choose to close your eyes or not when you're doing mindfulness, especially again, depending on the activity, but also depending on your comfort level. So the other thing that I tell people when we're doing a mindfulness activity that maybe it makes sense to close your eyes or to kind of focus your eyes on something, I'll just say, hey, choose something to focus your eyes on. So instead of closing them, I'll say, look at the spot in front of you and just keep your eyes there. So you want to keep your hands free of distractions. So again, our brain works super fast. We are working on focusing our mind. So we've got enough distractions happening in terms of sensory all around us. So we want to keep our hands free. And often I like to put my hands palm up just to kind of really communicate to my brain even, hey, right now I am open and I am accepting. We want to keep our feet on the ground because we want to stay grounded, stable, rooted. And then you might want to start with just doing it for 2 to 5 minutes and then gradually increase that time. If you're like, hey, I'm someone who can't sit still or think about the same thing for 30 seconds, start with 15 seconds. That works for me. And that's something that I do with kids sometimes. So I used to work with a kiddo who has ADHD. And he would have a really, really hard time when the teacher tried to do mindfulness in class. So again, I'm sure you can tell, I really love mindfulness. I am all for doing mindfulness in class. I think it's super helpful and that helpful to have it in schools. But he was someone whose mind goes so fast and has so many distractions, and his mind is so full all the time that when the teacher said, just kidding, empty your mind, it's empty, nothing else is in there except this specific thing that I want you to focus on, he would feel really uncomfortable and probably unsafe. And probably also something him and I worked on a lot was like, hey, he felt like he couldn't do it. And he had some judgments for himself about that too, because he was like, I I can't even sit still for 30 seconds. How am I supposed to empty my mind for 5 minutes? Right? And so what that looked like is he would sometimes like throw some objects in the classroom or hit his peers because he was having a hard time. And of course he was, right? So again, just being gentle with yourself and knowing that it might be really hard for me to focus on a specific thing and work on this skill. So really, really start with those baby steps and then work it up. When you're successful with one, add a little bit of time next time. We're going to bring your attention to what you've identified as the focus. So whether that's your breath, an object, a sound. And again, one of the ways that I do that is by using my 5 senses. So telling myself, okay, this is what I can see right now with this object or with this experience. So I can hear, smell, taste, touch. And that will help you really notice in a very full way what that experience is. And again, that's where those neural pathways are being strengthened. When you get distracted, you bring your mind back after you notice it, and you keep working on and strengthening that attention. Practice is key. Again, just like anything, right? And not always what we want to hear either. When I'm like, hey, I have this thing that's going to help you and it's going to be really amazing in your life. Sometimes we're like, okay, like just make it do it, right? That would be really helpful. And that's the hard part about mindfulness is it does take a lot of work and it does take a lot of practice. And so sometimes we have to really commit to it because I might be like, okay, I did this mindfulness exercise once and like that did nothing for me. Why should I continue? Right? But the more you practice it, the more helpful, hopefully it may be for you. And the easier it'll get to be. Okay. So another exercise. So I call this one the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And there's a few different ways that we can do it. So I know it's basically described there for you, but I'm just going to walk through it with you first, and then we'll do it together. And so obviously 5 things I have written there, 5 things we see, 4 things we hear, 3 things we touch, 2 things we see, 1 thing we hear. Sometimes people do 2 things I smell, 1 thing I taste. So I imagine probably not all of you are eating right now, so sometimes that can be a little bit less helpful. I like to do it in like for just my environment right now, what's going on for me. I did also kind of grab this rock. I have a rock that says courage on it that I like to keep with me. So sometimes I'll do an exercise similar to this with a specific object, right? And thinking about what I can see with that object, what I can hear. And again, taking those judgments off of the descriptions. So let's do this together now. So I want you to, again, sit in that comfortable position, feet on the floor, and have our hands up, back straight. And I want you to just look around your environment and notice what are 5 things that you can see. So right now, I can see my water bottle. I can see my courage rock. I see my microwave. I have a painting on my wall in front of me, and I can see my fridge. What are 4 things that you can hear? So I can hear my fridge humming. I can hear cars driving by outside. I can hear myself breathing. I can hear my dog breathing. 3 things that you can touch. So right now I feel my shirt. I feel the chair underneath of me, and I feel the cold floor under my feet. 2 more things that I can see. Oh, I have to remember what I said first. I can see my light, and I have a nice red plaid pillow behind me. And then 1 more thing that you can hear, and I just heard my dog move his foot on the floor. So what I really like about this exercise is it's something that we call a grounding exercise. So sometimes it can be really, really, really hard to bring ourselves back to the moment. So sometimes our emotions can kind of take over our brain, and it's really hard to think with logic and really figure out like, okay, what's going on? And sometimes we almost need like a reset button. And I kind of picture it like sometimes when I'm having a hard time, my head just like shoots off my body and is in the clouds, and I'm not accessible. So whatever's going on for me, I can't do any problem solving. I can't do any validating because I'm just like gone. My head is not here anymore. And so an exercise like this can just help us be present and bring us back, right? Because I have to literally focus on what is in front of me right now to do this. And sometimes people kind of choose like, hey, this sense is really especially helpful for me for this. For me specifically, I find hearing in this exercise can be really helpful because for some reason it tends to be one of the more difficult ones. Sometimes it's really hard to hear for things if we're already in an environment that's designed to be quiet, right? And so the other piece with that too is sometimes I will literally have kids be like, I hear someone clapping. Totally fine. That's happening right now. You hear it. It's bringing you back in the moment. It's retraining your focus. It's exactly what we want. Amazing. All right, so I am going to do just a quick overview of these 3 states of mind. We're not going to get into it too much today because I like to talk and I've done a lot of talking, and I know that you guys are probably excited for our trivia part of the hub, and I'm excited to get to that too. So I'll just do kind of a brief overview of the states of mind, and then maybe I can come back sometime and we can talk about it a little bit more. So I kind of alluded to the states of mind a couple of minutes ago. So 3 states of mind. We have our emotion mind. So it's got the red circle because it's more like the hot mind. It's more reactive. Reasonable mind is blue. It's the cool mind. Think about this like my logical mind. And then when we think about them together, we have wise mind. So emotion mind, reasonable mind can be really helpful when they're on their own. However, the goal is often going to be wise mind. So again, we're going to use mindfulness to kind of help shift us into wise mind to be aware of, hey, I'm just an emotion mind. I'm just a reasonable mind. How can I bring these 2 together? But so emotion mind is really helpful when you are at a funeral or at a wedding. It's not helpful to bring in logical thoughts usually in those situations, right? Reasonable mind, if I'm writing a test, guess what? It is not helpful if I worry about that conversation I had with my mom this morning during that test. Not helpful even a little bit, right? So it's helpful to stay in that logical space of, okay, this is my task, thinking with my logical thoughts, this is what I need to do. Wise mind is helpful when I need to think about like, okay, what emotions are driving this situation for me right now? What's actually going on for me? But how can I check those facts and make calm, cool, rational decisions based on those? And that's going to be helpful for us too. Yeah, so I think that I'm actually going to leave that there. So I just want to say thanks for hanging out with me during mindfulness today. Like I said, I love talking about it. And I was super pumped to join for the first hub session ever and to get a chance to talk about mindfulness. So